Politics now, the government trying to dampen down expectations of another kind. This is the spending on the budget for next month. The government has been outlining a number of problems they say were left by National, including the state of Middlemore Hospital. National, though, says Labor's looking for scapegoats. Amy Adams, who's the finance spokesperson for National, says, look, the reality of government is that there's always going to be cost pressures and unexpected events that have to be paid for.
We dealt with that successfully over 9 years, and we always made sure there were contingencies in our budgets to allow for it. Labor didn't. It overpromised. It's created all sorts of expectations. The penny is finally starting to drop, and rather than admit they didn't anticipate any of that, they're just trying to point the finger at everyone else.
That's Amy Adams. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, is with us now. Good morning, Prime Minister.
Good morning.
Is this a softening up exercise for the budget?
No. It's simply being transparent about some of the things that we're encountering. And of course, what I would correct is we did anticipate underinvestment. In fact, you'll remember it was one of the things that we debated hotly prior to the election. What we're seeing in health, for instance, yes, we're seeing new ways that hospitals are demonstrating the underinvestment, but we always knew that DHBs were facing deficit. We knew that we couldn't afford, for instance, the tax cuts that were being promised by the last government, and we knew that we would have to put aside extra operating and capital allowance. We did all of those things in preparation for what we're facing now.
Yeah, so that's right, isn't it? You knew what you were coming into, and indeed you signed up to your budget responsibility rules, keeping core Crown spending at 30% of GDP. So that's the straitjacket that you've got. And you made the straitjacket yourselves.
Oh, as I say, we anticipated the need for additional investment. So it's all about priorities. We said we couldn't afford to do things like tax cuts. We also said we would take an extra 2 years to get to the debt track that we had relative to the last government. So we already built in knowing that we had different priorities, and we saw chronic underinvestment that would require us to just take that little bit longer to reach our goal. And that was because we wanted, for instance, to put aside money for housing in particular and reinvesting in the super funds. So we've done that. What we have discovered since we've been in, whilst it doesn't at all surprise me, does show me that that underinvestment is a bit more widespread. What we won't shy away from, though, is the need to keep the books looking healthy, because, yes, every government has to plan for the unexpected natural disasters, biosecurity issues, which we're facing now, and again didn't anticipate needing to deal with that quite so quickly. But that's why it is important for us to maintain the books in a healthy state.
Yeah, but you can't have it all ways, though, can you? You can't say, well, we're going to have budget responsibility rules at no more than 30% of spending as a percentage of GDP, and then say, well, there's this awful infrastructure spending that needs doing. Once you've set your own parameters, then you either got to live with them or you break them.
Keeping in mind that what we've put aside for our operating allowance, our ability to reinvest in basic services like health and education, we put aside $2.6 billion. The last government put aside 1.7. When it came to investing in buildings, infrastructure, we put aside 3.4. They put aside $2 billion. We knew that we had to make sure that we had that ability to invest, because we knew about the chronic underinvestment, and we prioritised differently than the last government to do it. And so we still absolutely believe that we can maintain those rules, because New Zealanders do have an expectation that we keep the economy looking healthy, because that generates the wealth that enables us to keep reinvesting. So that's equally important. We can do both. Just some of those extra things we wanted to do are going to take us a little longer.
Yeah, Middlemore Hospital, though, it's not a bank breaking sum of money that's required to fix this, is it? It's $27 million. I mean, government spent 80 to 90 billion operationally and billions more on capital. I mean, 27 million is a drop in the bucket, really, as you can't really say, it's not the Bank of New Zealand crisis that incoming government faced or something, is it? I mean, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of the big numbers.
But at the same time, you have DHB saying that actually that's just one. They've claimed that they have over $10 billion worth of investment that needs to be made in their physical resources and their capital. So that's significant. And that's before you look at the deficit DHBs are already running just to keep the doors open.
Yeah. Why didn't Middlemore tell anyone about this? Why didn't the DHB tell anyone about this?
I mean, to be honest, I cannot say what Middlemore was sharing with their minister or not. We just don't know.
But you know what you were told. And your minister, David Clark, has admitted that he wasn't told. I mean, I'm looking at March 28, Radio New Zealand, March 23, Radio New Zealand. He said he wasn't told. So he'd been the minister for 5 months or more. I can't remember exactly when he was sworn in, but he'd been the minister for, at least 4 months at that point, hadn't he? And he wasn't told about it.
And it is entirely possible that he wasn't. But what he was told by DHBs is we're struggling. The funding we've been given to do the basics isn't enough. And the message they were given was you have to remain in surplus no matter what. And obviously some trade-offs have been made that are just not acceptable. And so that's the consequence. So there's no doubt, I know it's been called by the opposition an accounting issue, from memory, $200 million deficit, the significant deficit that DHBs are running. We all knew about that. That was very much public.
But you're sticking to the budget responsibility rules regardless?
Because, as I say, we've built contingency. We've put aside nearly more than $1 billion more than the last government in preparation. But we can also make sure that we keep the economy looking in good shape because that's equally important.
Okay. The only other thing I wanted to raise with you this morning is the comments that were made, highly publicised again, not the first time he said it, Taika Waititi saying that New Zealand is racist as F ... which is pretty racist, I would have imagined.
Yes, it's hard to know what scale that is, but yes, I follow.
Agree?
Yeah, I mean, I would preface it with the thing he said immediately before it was, this is the best country in the world. But he's highlighting an issue that we're not alone in this. You'd be
I'm
hard
just asking,
pressed
though, whether you agree with him. I'm not talking about other countries.
Is there racism in New Zealand? Of course there's racism in New Zealand. But what I'm proud of is we talk about it and we're openly combating it. But we can't turn a blind eye. Yes, it exists here, of course.
Thanks for your time. Do appreciate it. That is the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, and it's 28 minutes to 8.
Coming up here before 8 on Morning Report with Guy Espiner and